Hey everybody, Bobby Medina here, bringing you guys another exclusive interview here. I'm here with my good friend Paul Barron, and our esteemed guest today is someone I've known since way back in our days at Disneyland. And this guy's an amazing trumpet player, an amazing musician. First Call LA, he's played in all the movies, all the TV shows, played with everybody. I don't need to, we don't have time to list everybody he's worked with, but he's a fantastic recording artist in his own right and a band leader, highly sought after clinician as well. He's a Yamaha artist and endorses GR mouthpieces as well. The one, the only, Wayne Bergeron. Great to have you here, Wayne.
Thank you, Bobby. And hey, Paul, man, it's great to see you guys, of course, man. And we do go back a ways, don't we?
Yeah, it's been a few years, so.
Were you in the Toy Soldier band?
I was.
Yeah, I never did that gig, thank God.
I know, you were in the fanfare, I think.
No, I was in the Royal Band, which was.
The Royal Band, that's right, okay.
Same purple tights, you know, but.
Yeah.
Yeah,
do you have pictures from those days?
I do, matter of fact.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, man, those, a lot of people that worked at Disneyland, they hated it, But I look back at all my times there, man. It's nothing but like fun, man.
I had a great time just meeting so many wonderful musicians.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
All the players I met there. I mean, so many of us still work together to this day.
Absolutely.
So it's
Is that where you met George Graham first?
Well, he wasn't at Disneyland, no. But I met the first time I met George Graham was at LA City College. There was a night band there, and they had all these local pros. And I got called to sub, and I didn't know what it was. I just knew that this guy Woody James had this band. And I get there, and the trumpet section is George Graham, Buddy Childers, and Connie Condoli.
Wow.
And I'm like 19. And I mean, it's all these, Pete Chrisley and all these, like, the best players in town. Just the Kicks band that they played in for. And it's the first time I'd ever heard George play, or Buddy, or Con. And man, that night I remember like it was yesterday, man, because it was like this learning experience. Because I was working at Disneyland a little bit at the time, doing some stuff, and maybe I was 20, and all the players in Orange County out there, they played a little differently, and they, my rep at the time was, oh yeah, well he just plays really loud and high. He plays too loud. Like he doesn't blend. I mean, I had this rep of amongst the elitist Orange County players, who are doing nothing now. But that's a whole other masterclass for another day. And then I heard George Graham play, and so I took that very seriously. And I always tried to conform to the way players played, and I was trying to be better. I can take criticism, round ourselves out, and there's probably some truth to what they were saying, So. Then I heard George Graham play it, and I'd never heard anybody play the trumpet so loud. And then Buddy played lead, and I was like, man, they were just like, they were burying me. It sounded like I had a straight mute in. and I realized, I go, wait a minute. These people in Orange County don't know anything. This is what it's supposed to sound like, So I started patterning myself after that type of playing and going after, just interesting, different areas, the way they think music should be played. And not that it was bad, or just different. And so George and I became very good friends, not right after that, but years later. We started playing in bands, and he's responsible for getting me in Bob Florence's band and on some many gigs that I got on, because he had a little bit of faith in me, and as Paul can tell you, George Graham was our Arnie Tchaikovsky.
Right.
Yeah, I heard him play at some club in Orange County one time, and it was just with a quartet or so. I think it was just a trio behind him, and he was pretty loud,
Yeah, but he could play beautiful. I mean, George
exactly. What a sound!
And George was a nice jazz player, because when he was on Cy Zettner's band, he played third trumpet, and Arnie was the lead player, and they were roommates and drinking buddies, obviously, And George told me that because of Arnie, it's how he learned to play lead, because he said that, George said he played kind of pointing down a little bit. He was kind of a downstream type player. And he would ask Arnie, hey, Arnie, man, I want to get some more chops. He couldn't play above a high D, And Arnie said, well, you got to get your chop. And, and showed him some stuff. And George started taking to it. And George ended up, becoming this great, great lead trumpet player. And very much sounding like Arnie, because you could tell the influence was there in the note length and in the style and where they put the time and everything. I mean, if you listen to old Bob Florence and or an old, Boss Brass, it's the same lead trumpet player.
It is, yeah.
The length of that eighth note.
Yeah. The Toronto quarter, they call it.
Exactly, and we call it a George Graham eighth note. So we go, which is fine too. But those guys put, they put heat on the front and on the back of the note, so it went bap, and so it had a big brick,
And almost that little flip at the end, Arnie did quite a bit.
And it would just, and so you could hear the influence in George's playing from Arnie, most definitely. And it's the same sound, that big sound, kind of a darker lead sound, and
They're high E's. I swear, if you were to analyze it on a spectrograph or something, whatever it would be called, it probably looks identical.
Did you make
and
a
in
spectrograph?
fact,
Is that a word? I'm going to look that up.
Well, I just made it up, but it'll be.
It always sounds so impressive, though, when he says it.
Yeah, I delivered
My
it
wife
with a lot
she
of
makes up
confidence.
stuff, and
Let me check my spectrograph here.
Yeah. Wasn't he a character in the James Bond movie or something?
Spectrograph. So anyway, that's I didn't meet George at Disneyland, but I met him later. I met a lot of great players at Disneyland, though. Andy Martin and players that I still work with. Sal Lozano, Eric Marienthal, a lot of players that Bobby knows.
Don Clark was
Don
down
Clark,
there. Another
Don went
fantastic
through
trumpet
the
player.
same cancer thing I went through. Different.
Is that the same one? Wow.
He had to do what I did for a year. But Don Clark is an unsung hero from Orange County. I mean, he really was a great.
Absolutely.
He was a great lead player and a great jazz player. And I did a lot of bands with him, man. And he was the most swinging, and he had a day gig. He was a copier repairman.
Yeah, I remember that. God, we used to play with him at the Orange Coast, one of the Orange Coast college bands, and around, different casuals and things, and just stellar musician.
He would have been a contender if he would have taken the risk and left the day job. He just wanted the security, so he just played for fun, and he worked at Disneyland, seasonally, but man, you talk about a really great lead player, man. Swinging, man, what a feel. We played in this guy Bill Elliott's band together for years, and Bill Elliott wrote music from the 30s and 40s, but original music, and it was just a really great little band. We did several CDs together, and we played on some movie source cues together, And Don was the second trumpet player and the jazz player, and Daryl Gardner was the third player, who Bobby knows was a really solid, great lead player, And man, and this band was cooking, man. I mean, like old style. I mean, and Bill's very particular about the style and the time, and we play like that. We don't just phone it in. And Don, man, would just, he'd play these breaks, man. At the band, he'd go, bang, he'd go, he sounded like Ziggy Elman, man. And just
cool,
just come in, just killing it. And I mean, I'm one of his hugest fans, man. But yeah, so many great players came from that scene out there, So Disneyland was a good training ground for me, for sure. As far
it was, and so did that have any effect on you getting into the studios, meeting people there, or
Not really. I started doing some other work, and I started subbing in the other band. I ended up being in the Disneyland band at one point. I started, and I worked around Orange County, and I wasn't doing anything, gigs that were earth-shattering, or anything. I did a couple of road gigs and things. I think getting off the road with Maynard in '86, so I'm like 27 or at this point. I think that I came back and worked at Disneyland, some seasonal work again after that, and my reputation, I was like, oh, he's been playing lead with Maynard, and I think that helped my reputation a little bit. And I was playing some different. I started subbing in some bands and Bob Florence's band when they needed somebody, and I think those things led me to those upper echelon players that were doing the work, like George Graham and Warren Looning and Larry Ford at the time, who was still alive, playing in Bob Florence's band, and Steve Hufstetter and Charlie Loper playing lead trombone, and I think getting in those situations and being heard by those players that are doing the work, is where the recommendations come from. So I'll just tell you a story about my first movie date, because it's a funny story.
I was just going to ask you about that, actually.
So the first kind of big movie I did with a big orchestra, with the A-list, players, was this movie called Another Stakeout, and it's, 30 something years ago now. And Warren Looning and George Graham, who both worked for Joe Soldo, who's a contractor, who's 95 now or 94, he's still working. It's amazing. He'd gone through his whole list of players, and they needed another trumpet player, and so they asked George, hey, I need a player, and Warren said, oh, yeah, we play with this guy Wayne Bergeron, and he subs in Bob Florence's band, and solid player, and I got to be friends with those guys a little bit at that time, So I get the call for coming for a couple of days of work on this thing, and I remember coming in and being really nervous, and it's like an 89 to 90 piece orchestra and 4 trumpets, and I'm playing. I've never been so terrified to play 4th trumpet in my life. And Arthur Rubinstein was the composer, and he's a real hard ass on the podium. He's a yeller. He's screaming about shit all the time. And it's like really intimidating, not at us, but just like I was so fucking nervous. And nobody's fucking up. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be cursing. Nobody's screwing up. Nobody's making a mistake. And so I'm going, okay, don't play on arrest. Don't play on arrest. So anyway, we get through it. I kind of get my composure, and it wasn't that difficult, but I got through it. It was really fun, and exciting for me, of course. And I was kind of beaming and in awe and, being a fanboy to all the players I was playing with. So it was Malcolm, George, Warren, and me.
Wow.
And so after the sessions were over, I went to Joe Solo and I turned in my paperwork to get paid, my forms, and he said, I said, man, thank you for the opportunity. I go, man, this was like just so awesome. He goes, oh yeah, everybody said you did a really great job, and I glad you were available. I go, yeah, me too, and he goes, I'm going to put you on my list. I'm like, oh man, God, that's very kind. He goes, I'm going to put you on the bottom of my list. And then he kind of laughed and he goes, you want to know why I'm going to put you on the bottom of my list? And I said, yeah, I guess I'd like to know that. And he goes, well, of all my players here that I've been using for the last 30 years, who should I fire? Who would you like me to fire so I can put you ahead of them? Then I kind of laugh. I go, oh, of course, that makes perfect sense. I go, I'm honored to be on the bottom of your list. And he goes, don't worry. He goes, as they die, piss me off, or retire, you'll move up. And I go, and I now play first trumpet for Joe Sullivan. So all that happened.
Yeah.
They all pissed him off, retired, or passed away. So I slowly moved up his list. And so I did many, many sessions. He always contracted for Pat Williams. And so I did, the last, 15 years of Pat's life. I played first trumpet on most everything he did for singers or whoever. And so those things led me, those little recommendations led me into a lot of, that wasn't like I started doing a bunch of movie work right after that, but at least I was on the map now. As somebody that if they needed somebody, the recommendations were coming through. And I think that's how you get in the business, as you guys know. There's players that come and go here in LA, somebody, composer's nephew may come in and, they want to put him on fourth trumpet and you got to just deal with it, but maybe he doesn't do a good job. And so they're not going to get, the players are in, this person's not qualified or, too green or whatever. And that's not good for that player to be put in that situation before they're ready either, as you both know. You got to, when preparedness meets opportunity, and there's a lot of players that have come through here over the years that I've watched with big reputations, and they came from UNT or whatever, these great players, and but they get here and maybe they're not quite right for everything, possibly, and they're kind of a flash in the pan, and they come and go. You never see them again, and you kind of wonder what happened, or they talk a big game. Anybody talking a big game, my thing with that is you hear somebody talk, when you talk about how great they are, they go, oh yeah, man, well I did this, man, and I nailed that gig, man, I nailed this high G, man, and well, that lets you know right there that there's some insecurity about their abilities, so they've got to talk. And George Graham told me this. He goes, there's a fine line between getting discovered and found out.
That's a great saying.
Yeah, and you don't have to say a word. You can be a mute. And when you play your horn, it tells everybody everything they need to know. Whatever you're doing, maybe it's something you're great and you get to this and you're not good at it. Everybody's going to know. You don't have to say, oh yeah, I'm really great, listen to this. They're going to know as soon as you play.
Well, I remember getting back to what you were saying about maybe not being ready, but Shu telling me many years ago, and not just me, I know other people that he's told us to too, you only get one chance to make a good impression, so make sure you're ready at the time, when you start trying to get get into different areas, because if you're not, you'll be found out right off the bat, and you won't get a chance to get in again.
Yeah, you could be, you could dig your own grave that way, I think it's good if you're in a situation where you're not sure or you don't feel as comfortable, you have to lay low and just do the best you can do, and I mean, let's face it, most people getting in that situation are going to be a pretty competent player, but you got to lay low and you got to keep your mouth shut, and you got to go in, and you want the players to like you. I mean, you want the players around you to feel like you're trying. And I always went in, in the section, man, my job was to make the first trumpet player sound as great as they can sound and make them comfortable. Paul, here is even though usually when he would come through town with the show, he played first because he was traveling with the show. When we came through with Aladdin, because we were there for 3 months, because of the union rule, they had to use locals, but Paul has a 47 card, so the contractor asked me, goes, hey, Paul Bergeron, would it be okay if we put him in the section? I go, yeah, Paul's a friend of mine, of course. You pissed probably a couple of players off in town, but that's fuck 'em. I mean, it's just the way it's just the way it goes sometimes. You have a card here, you're welcome to work. If the conductor would like to have you there, fine. So, and Paul and I being friends, so Paul played second to me. And Paul was, he could have had an attitude about it, said, well, I know this book, I've been playing this book for 6 months. But Paul came in and played second trumpet, man, and was the most supportive second trumpet player and played perfectly under me at all times. He could sense if I was having chop problems. He knew when to get out of my way. He knew when he could lean in, all of that. I sense all that from you when you play. And Rob was the same way, third trumpet player. So that makes a good trumpet section, and when players are aware of what the other player is going through. And, you could have just buried me. So, well, no, it goes like this, But I went through, as you remember, I was having a little bit of lip problems at one point in the show. I was having to play a bigger mouthpiece. My lip was so swollen. And, but we made through, and it was all fine. So being that good section player.
Well, it's like you're part of a ball team, I mean, you're all supposed to be playing together. It's really, I don't know what it is sometimes. It seems like when you do get into the upper echelons, when you play with people that are really competent, it's no longer like this competitive thing. It is more of a team spirit. Yeah, exactly.
The issue goes away. I mean, it exists. The problems exist at the higher level too, to some degree. Sometimes let's say with the trumpet comes, when you play a loud instrument, you play drums or trumpet. I mean, there's that confidence versus ego thing. You have to be confident. You have to be able to lay it down confidently, but you also have to know your role of the situation. You may feel like I can do a better job playing first on this particular thing than the person that's actually doing it, but that person's not going to suck. We all got the stuff that we're really good at, and we're all pretty versatile, but we've got our strengths.
I told Paul this story. We were chatting about this the other day, and I was invited to go see a session a long, long time ago of Chase Revisited, and it was really fun. I think I was in high school, maybe I was in college, and I went with some friends. And we went as a guest, I think, of Walt Johnson. I think I was with Rich Wetzel and another buddy of ours from high school. And we went to this session. And I remember just this incredible playing. And I think that Bob O'Donnell was playing lead on this particular piece. And I remember there was like this big high A thing going on. And I remember him stopping in between the takes, and he says, the A's not quite in there today. And he says, can somebody else do it? Oh, yeah, no problem. And somebody else took that line or whatever, nailed the A. There was no questions asked, just move on.
Yeah. Oh, I've passed parts to, I've been in, I did this record for Amy Grant, the singer, and Pat Williams had done all the charts, so I'm playing first trumpet. But it wasn't so big bandy. It was very light big bandy. Everything was bucket mute and kind of a lighter session, but all jazz for the most part. And then on one of the cues that came up, there was this trumpet solo, like 12 bars long and kind of written intervallic thing. And I was looking at this, I go, this is kind of an interpreted, jazzy thing. And I'm looking at it, but it's kind of big intervals going like, bo, bo, ee, bo, dee, dee, oh, like something. Is this like a Milesy thing or what is it? And so I'm kind of looking around, I'm looking at the string parts, and I see nothing but whole notes. And the trombones have pads, and and I see it's cued in the second trumpet part as well. And I started looking at this. I go, this is. And Tim Morrison was playing second trumpet at the time when he was still playing here, you know. And we started this thing. I go, hey Tim, why don't you play that cue? I go, I'll play the 2D stuff, and you play that little solo. And as soon as we started, man, I was like, it was his thing, man. It was like, oh, boy, it was like Born on the 4th of July, you know. It was like that stuff, you know. And he, you know, sounded beautiful on it. And I remember one of the trombone players turned around and goes, man, either you're the dumbest person ever or the smartest, you know, for giving that up. And I could have played it, and I couldn't play it like him, you know. I could have been, if he wasn't there, I'd have played it, and it would have been fine, but it wouldn't have sounded like that. I mean, it's, you know, glorious, you know, just beautiful. But then I remember on the break, because there was press there and, you know, video going on, and then, you know, he's getting pictures with Amy Grant. I'm going, hey, wait a minute, that's supposed to be me. Damn it. But it was just one of those moments where that was what needed to be done.
Hey, what's that saying, Wayne, that you told me about? Yo-yo or something like that when you're going to pass a part?
Well, I don't remember.
Oh, okay.
But
I thought you told me a story that it started like with Conrad Gazzo and Euan Bracey and those guys. And
oh, well, Euan always said yo about everything. Yo.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay.
Yeah, but Euan just said yo about everything, you know. So that was his catchphrase, yo, you know. But you know, we passed parts around, and like I said, those guys helped me out on these Minions sessions the other day because I wasn't quite ready to play. It was some hard music, you know, and thank God John Lewis and Rob Shear there and Tom Hooten played fourth trumpet on this particular thing.
What a sound he's got, man. Unbelievable.
Yeah. And it says my internet is unstable, but I'm still here, okay?
No, you're still
I'm
here.
I'm unstable. My internet is stable.
Well, you know, I didn't want to make this, you know, go there, but, you know, since you're talking about your issue with this cancer that you've gone through here, and we're all really, really happy you're on the mend and you're doing good again. I can't express that enough on my end. But you know, this group, it's primarily trumpeters 50 plus, you know, and there's a lot of people on it that have gone through it, that are going through issues and things like that, and some serious, you know, complete body things, dental things as a result of it. But just to give some more hope and to let people know, I mean, you know, how do you get through something like this mentally, and how did you come back to it on the horn? Maybe you can explain how much time you took off and how you got back.
Yeah, I'll just give you the quick version of the story so we don't get too long-winded about it. But I was diagnosed in March, and you know, it freaked me out, of course, you know, and I started losing weight immediately. I started my treatments on May 11th, my first radiation and my first chemotherapy. I did 3 chemos, 3 weeks apart, so they're very strong chemos because they last for 3 weeks, and then radiation 5 days a week for 35. And you can see my mask right there, and it's my little prize, my consolation prize I got out of this deal, you know. I got really sick, as I mentioned to you before we started this thing. I got really sick the first week from the chemo, so trumpet became a lot less important to me, and I kind of just stopped playing. I didn't feel like playing, so and I didn't have no work. It was the beginning of the pandemic, so I didn't really have anything to keep my chops up for. So I quit playing for a few weeks, maybe 3 weeks. And then when I did my next chemo, they adjusted my medication. I didn't get so sick, so I kind of started playing. But at that point, radiation side effects were starting to kick in because the tumor was here, so they're radiating my head here, you know, and so my throat was getting a little bit sore, and it did get to the point where eating, even though I never got a feeding tube or any of that stuff, I managed to eat through all of this. It got to where it was like swallowing glass at one point, like the worst sore throat you've ever had that never went away for a long time. So it was pretty difficult. But I played, and what I would do when I started playing again, I played soft, and I did Clark 1 and 2 every day, and at that point I could only get to a G on top of the staff because my chops had gone south from not playing for 3 weeks, but also because my throat was hurting and was getting tight. So I just kind of played what I could play, and I worked on my fingers and started experimenting around with some stuff that might make this better, and just trying to make good use of my practice time. And then, like I'd mentioned earlier, just keeping the reeds working, you know, our reeds here. So if you're not blowing air through them all the time, you know, and making them vibrate, they're going to, just like a bad clarinet reed, if it just sat there and got dried out and all funky, it's not going to respond very well. So we have to, as you trumpet players, we have to keep at this thing. So I did that every day, and I think that really, really helped. Now that I'm 2 months out of my last treatment, and I'm coming back, and I can get up to a high G again, and I'm just starting to get where I can get over that break to the A and stuff. And it's not my chop so much at this point, but I think I was so scared of pain from playing that I'd go up there and I would tighten up, and it would keep me from being able to get the notes, like the panic of like, this is going to hurt or it's going to feel uncomfortable, and which it did. Let me tell you, it's like it's your throat's sunburned and raw. It's like it's been out in the sun every day for 2 months, and so there's scar tissue and things in there, and then when you stretch, like imagine having a wound on a sensitive part of your body, on your inner thigh or something, like a big open cut, and then stretching it.
Yeah.
What that's going to feel like. Well, that's going on in the throat. So even though maybe I'm not doing any damage, but so anyway, that's kind of how I approach this, and I've become very regimented in how I practiced, especially recently. I kind of do the same thing every day. I start. I'll show you one quick thing. I don't know if you know the name Burnett Dillon.
Sure.
But Burnett Dillon played first trumpet in the Pacific Symphony, and I played in the Long Beach Municipal Band with him. And he was did a lot of film work here and stuff. He was a great, great trumpet player. And his wife, Louise DiTullio, played on every film you ever heard. She was a top call flute player in town here. Well, I took a little lesson with him on Zoom the other day, because I was just talking about, and he made me buy this mute. This Dennis Wick practice mute, which is the worst piece of crap practice mute ever made. I mean, Dennis Wick has made some great mutes. This mute is not a great mute. I'm just going to put it out there and say it. All those other mutes are great. It's quiet, but he goes, buy this, and then we're going to do a Zoom thing. And then he would make me, because this mute does not respond. I mean, it's the worst. I mean, trying to get this thing to respond. So he'd make me try to get a second line G without the tongue and come in from nowhere. It's really hard to do because this thing does not respond. You have to force, but you keep at it, and you get this smaller and smaller. And then once you've got it, you crescendo and the mute will resonate at that point. You got to put enough. But if you can get it started with nothing, and you crescendo to what you think is fortissimo, which doesn't take that much in this because you hit the top volume, it stops you. And he was saying, he goes, that's really your pianissimo and your fortissimo. That's how much we overblow.
That's interesting.
And he said, you will never, ever, if you can do this in this mute, you will never, ever, ever have trouble coming in on a soft entrance with the horn open.
Wow.
So he said, so I would do this for like 15 minutes. That's what I do every day. I'm barely blowing, and when I first started with him, I was like, because I'm just overblowing everything. So I do that, and then when I open up, the response is like, boom. It's like swinging two bats.
Wow, yeah, like the donut.
So a lot of people will say practicing in a mute is bad, which I would say if you did it for prolonged, like the Yamaha Silent Brass, which I think is a great mute, but playing in it for an hour is a false sense of security. This you just do for a little while, and it's just to get the reed to respond at the lowest level, the least amount of air and the least amount of force. So I've been doing that, and it's really helping. I just noticed when I go to play soft, the response is much more instantaneous than it even used to be before. So that little bit.
I think you need to reach out to the Wick Company right now and get an endorsement with them, because you're probably going to sell 100 of these off this interview.
I'm sorry, Mr. Wick, that I badmouthed your mute, but this is a difficult mute to make respond. But it really served me a great purpose.
No, that's cool. That's a really an interesting point.
Yeah. So.
And what's really interesting to me is that that you take a lesson from somebody. I take an occasional lesson from Bobby Shue or somebody here, somebody there.
Basis. We talk.
Yeah, and so Yeah, so, but it just goes to show you that, no matter what level of player you are, we always have room to improve a little bit and to straighten things out, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing that my whole career. I didn't take a lot of lessons when I was young. I studied with my junior high band director, who was a very good all-around trumpet player named Ron Savitt. And I probably learned more from him about music than anybody, because he always talked about trying to be stylistically diverse and be convincing in what you're playing. If you're going to play Dixieland, try to sound like a Dixieland trumpet player, man. You got to be convincing. You can't just play the same way on everything, And I remember him telling me that, and that's been my mantra, through my entire career. I studied with Boyd Hood from the LA Philharmonic a bit when I went through some dental problems when I was working at Disneyland. I learned a lot from him about different things. I took a lesson with Charlie Davis a long time ago, I remember, and Charlie and I are old buddies, and these are coming from different perspectives, but you get information that can be valuable to you out of all these things, even though they're different, and maybe they're conflicting point of views on how we play. But you can, in Bobby Shue, who comes from another place.
Right.
He really goes against the grain of the way we've been taught to play trumpet.
One of the things I was just going to say, one of the most important things I ever learned was from him, and which was, basically just exactly what you're saying here. Try different things. You need to figure out what works for you. Yeah,
there's not one way to do this.
No, absolutely not.
And you can think about it however you want. You can think, well, I'm buzzing the notes or I'm resonating the notes, and it doesn't really matter as long as the end result and the sound coming out of the bell is good. Well, I don't care what you think about, and nor do I even try to think about it. I a long time ago, I can't remember who told me this, they said, quit trying to, I want you to resonate sound. And Yuan Racy used to say, every note has to have reverence. I studied with Yuan Racy a few times as well. But we never talked about whether we were buzzing or whatever. He would just say, produce a good sound. And we would try to get response, and however that happened, it happened, so I try not to think about the technical aspect of what's going on too much, is more than listening what's coming out of the bell. Now, if I'm having an issue with an attack or something, then you have to dive in and you got to get under the hood of the car and figure out which fan belt is loose and make some adjustments, but until then, if the car is running fine, there's no reason to open that hood, so right. That's kind of how I am. Everything with me becomes a car analogy. I got to tell you, and I don't know why that is, because I come from a family of machinists and racers. My brother built race boats, and I always had fast. So everything's a car thing to me. I always comes to compression. Compression equals horsepower. all of those things.
Now, I imagine you've sitting next to all these great players like Warren Looning and Charlie Davis and George and all that. You probably pick up things along the way. Can you tell us, what little nuggets that you've got from players like that?
Oh yeah, I mean, well, Warren, you don't get any nuggets from Warren because Warren, Warren lived in this nice home and made a lot of money and played on thousands of recordings. He never practiced. He studied with Al Hurt. I don't know if you know that. He's from New Orleans, and he studied with Al Hurt.
Wow.
And he was like this, great kind of Dixieland jazz player. He ended up being in the Lawrence Welk Jr. band. You've seen.
I have that record.
You've seen him playing with Lawrence Welk and how great he sounded at 17 and 16 years old. Mm-hmm. I mean, he already had it. So he was he worked hard, but he was a very natural musician, and that's how he played. So his neighbors thought he was a drug dealer because he would leave with his briefcase, his Bach trumpet case, and a bag, and they would never hear a peep of trumpet from the house. And he had a Mercedes, and he lived a nice life, But Warren, so we just play, when I played with him, I imitated the way he played. He was one of my favorite trumpet players of all time. So when I play flugelhorn, his flugel style is one I happen to like, and I like his sound. And so there's a little bit of all those players you mentioned, and I think we all do this, is we take little bits and pieces of things we like and we imitate them, and we mold them all into what becomes our sound. And there's not a note I play that doesn't have George Graham in it. And there's not a note that Paul plays that doesn't have Arnie in it.
True enough,
yeah. Because I just know where he comes from, so... But I admire all these different players, George, and I patterned my playing after him for a long time, to the point where they go, oh, that was very George-like, they would say to me the way I play. No, but then I started going, well, God, I don't want to sound just like George. but that influence is in there. So I started putting my own spin on things. I've got a little Maynard in me, like we all do. You know, it's hard to avoid that as a trumpet player, having a little bit of that in there. It's keeping it under control.
Well, you
You got
definitely
to keep the
have
governor
your
of it,
thing.
the Maynard thing, you know.
Know when to use it. Yeah.
Exactly, you know, one of the most exciting players of, you know, ever, you know. Obviously.
Absolutely.
Yesterday was 14 years
That's right.
passing to the day. And I remember I was at the Hollywood Bowl playing a gig, and the Dizzy Gillespie All-Stars were playing at the time. They were closing the night, and I had to tell them all that Maynard just passed away because Maynard's daughter told me. I told Frank Green, and Slide Hampton was there, and they just broke down and cried, man. You know,
I remember that time, Wayne, because I was in town playing with you. You had taken the night off of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Oh, that's when that was. Wow.
Yeah, and then we met up in some place in North Hollywood, and I think you introduced me to Frank Green.
Oh yeah, that's right. We hung out. That's right.
Yeah.
Wow. And I'm sure there was no alcohol involved. I'm pretty sure.
Well, we can't condone that, but there might have been one or two.
I probably had a ginger ale or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
absolutely.
remember correctly. I don't exactly remember some of the more involved. But anyway, so you know all those influences, and getting to sit next to those players, man, it's like getting to do that. You know, you can study with somebody or you can listen to somebody play, but sitting next to somebody that does something better than you, and something you realize is something you want, you go, man, I want to sound like that. And there's been many, many players, of course, over the years, even when I was younger, you know, that no name, you know, or not no name, but players you might not know their names. Daryl Gardner, though, was one of them. And I told Daryl this the other day, man, he was, you know, all flat. I go, no, Daryl, I mean it, man. I go, when I first started hearing you play, man, I wanted to sound like you. And Daryl we kind of sound alike in some ways, sound-wise and stuff. You know, we have the same kind of buzz on our sound. And I always just admire the cleanliness of his playing and the solidness of the way he played the notes.
Man, I played some Easter services with him a couple of years in a row where we were doing all this. It was kind of an orchestral thing, and then there was like this fanfare stuff that we were doing, and he was just all over it.
Oh, he's
I
great.
remember that.
He's probably 74 now, maybe 75. He still looks great. I see him on Facebook but man, he's one of those players, and you take that and it, you know, and it molds you into who you are, and then hopefully you develop your own sound, and then some other players that hear us, you might hear something I like, and they take the torch, but it's all really just the combination of all those things. And
right.
you know, I like to take a lot of credit for this just because of my huge ego, but I look at somebody like Louis Dowdeswell, who you all know. And Louis is like my trumpet son. I mean, he really is, because he was playing along with my recordings and stuff when he was young, and the Big Fat Band was the first big band he ever heard. And so I'm very proud that I was one of his early influences, you know, as a player, and he kind of patterned his playing after mine, it seems like, anyway, you know, and he's playing my mouthpiece and my horn. And I remember emailing him and saying, dude, what planet are you from? And he was like 15 years old, and he's just crushing this stuff, you know, and we got to be friends. I went back there and he did a concert in London. Got to meet him, met his parents. He came out here and stayed with my wife and I, came and visited. And then last New Year's, or 2 New Years ago, him and his fiance, they came. And so we've become very good friends. He's surpassed me as a player and a recording engineer. He's just become this thing. But I hear my influence in his playing, and if you don't think that, you know, doesn't make me proud or flatter me, I'd be lying. I'd be lying.
Well, he sounds amazing from what I've seen, you know,
but he's found
online.
his own sound now too. You know, it was like the thing where I think he was imitating, you know, like we all do. You know, you hear something we like, and I'm flattered that he liked the way I played. But now I hear he's got that input, but he's got his own thing now. And,
cool.
And he's just, you know, he's amazing, man. He's an amazing person. He's one of the nicest, especially for being as young as he is. Man, he's no ego, wants to learn. He's like we're talking about, man. He's listening to everybody, man, and admires everybody, you know, that's doing great things, you know. And
that's cool.
So, and I think that's just the circle of life as a musician. You know, we take the ball from somebody else, and we move on, and we retire, we pass away or whatever, and somebody else takes that torch, and all those things are still involved, though. And that's why it's not to get long-winded, but that's why it's really important to know where the music comes from, to have one foot in tradition and have one foot in the future. Because if you don't know tradition, and you don't know where it comes from, you might become this. But you're missing, if you're starting here, you're missing a big part of where this person you're picking up from, where they got it from. You're just picking up a piece of the puzzle, instead of the whole puzzle. So, I think it's really important to understand the history of where the music of our instrument comes from. And
I think stylistically too, like I've never wanted to be a parody of, if I'm playing something that's sort of Dixieland, like I don't want to be playing it in such a way that I'm making fun of it or a parody of it. I want it to be traditionally correct and pay respect to that music.
There's a fine line with that stuff, especially when it comes to somebody like Maynard. And we'll use him because he's a good example of this. Maynard was he had an odd way of playing, which was, especially later, in his career. Early on, I mean, he had his own style. You could hear Maynard, he's one of those players, 2 notes, that's Maynard Ferguson. Whether he was playing lead or playing a solo or whatever, the buzz in his sound, the style of his shakes, all the stuff he did. But then later, he became, became this wild, he became like a rock guitar player. Everything went, wow, he just became this thing, where everything was kind of uncentered and shaking, but it was exciting, and it was just what he did. But he's really the only one that could get away with that. Because when I would hear other people imitate him to a T like that, the only one that ever did it with respect that I heard, there's a couple of people, Lars Lundgren, the guy, he did a Maynard thing, man, and
he's a member here. He's a member here in the group.
He did this record, man, and it really sounds good. I mean, he's really paying homage to Maynard without being too over the top, with it. And it's really great. And Eric Miyashiro, I give them a free pass because Eric's made, he made a career out of doing this, which he kind of regrets. He's he's sick of being Maynard. He's Eric Miyashiro, man. He brings his own shit to the table.
Absolutely.
And so, but he's really, done it right. I've always kind of shied away from even Maynard tributes and things like that because I don't want to be compared. I'm not going to ever play MacArthur Park the same way, man. I'm going to play it how I play it with some Maynard influence in it. And I can't play it the way he played it, and it's him. But the influence is there. But with him, if it's such a cult following, if you do something different, they're all over you and they're criticizing. Oh, well, Maynard didn't, he didn't breathe that well.
But that's silly.
Because he's a giant lung. We're not all, we don't all have that. We have to, but that happens a lot. And I don't take it seriously, but I just don't put myself in that situation. As a matter of fact, when somebody goes, "Hey, do you want to play Rocky?" I go, "Well, that's going to cost you an extra $2,000." Now, occasionally I will do, if a band director really wants to do MacArthur Park or something, I'll do it. Because I enjoy playing that. I mean, I think that's just, it's one of those pieces that holds up to the test of time. It's a great song.
Yeah,
the arrangement is like a built-in, exciting, great thing to play. And am I sick of it? Oh, God, yes, I'm sick of it. But it's still kind of fun to play,
Yeah.
But do I want to do that all night or do a Maynard tribute and do 20 Maynard tunes? No, I can't. And I don't want to try. I'm 62 years old now. I'm way old for your group even.
No, you're not.
60 and over group. And I just don't want to work that hard anymore. I mean, I've still got plenty of chops and stuff, but I just want to kind of do what I do and know what I do and know my place and know my strengths. And how I can get through a concert when I do a concert, how many tunes I can play comfortably and get through it without folding. Even Maynard, when he would play, you would watch him. He didn't play the whole time. He would play and then he'd rest and he'd let cats stretch it so he could rest.
Yeah.
So even Maynard, with his invincible chops, I mean, he was smart enough to know he had to pace himself through a gig. And then we do these Maynard things, and they go, we want to bring in, we want you to do Gospel John, MacArthur Park, Maria, Pocahontas, give it one. They want you to do like 8 Maynard charts and are one person. And those are charts where it's just nonstop playing for each tune, and they don't understand that.
Yeah, you're going to be on your teeth after the third one, yeah.
It's physically kind of impossible for just about anybody. I'm sure there's somebody that can go out there and do it, but... it's not me. I'll tell you that. First, to let you know, that's not me. So if you've got one of those gigs, don't call me unless there's like 4 of them. There's 4 of the trumpet players doing it. I'll play a couple of the tunes, and I'm in. So.
Well, Wayne, I gotta say thank you so much for being here. We're just about out of time. I know Paul has another something else he's got to get to here.
He's
Just
so
a
busy,
second.
Paul Barron. He's
But
just so popular.
we're gonna end this thing with a lightning round real quick. So I'm gonna let Paul throw out the first question. Just tell us whatever comes to mind. There's no right answers. There's no wrong answers. Whatever comes first to mind. Go ahead, Paul.
Okay. Favorite place to visit in the world?
Hawaii.
Hawaii. Okay, Bobby.
Maui.
Top three albums you'd take to a desert island.
Al Jarreau, the one with Morning on it, and that would be on there. Stevie Wonder songs in the Key of Life. The trumpet ones are really hard, man. But Miles Ahead, I don't know. That's a tough one, but those are three that I need there. It's funny I'd mentioned two pop artists. But Stevie
No, it's
Wonder,
not funny. They're great music is great
I think
music.
he's the greatest, the greatest ever. He's probably my favorite artist of all time.
Okay, most memorable gig.
Playing Aladdin with you.
Now everybody knows you're full of shit.
No, I'm going to tell you my most memorable gig, and it just happened recently, and it was doing that movie I'm not supposed to talk about. Sounds like Left Side Story.
Yeah.
And getting to do that with the New York Philharmonic and the whole experience that went along with that is really one of the greatest things I've done in my career.
Well, I can't wait until that's released then. Will that be in the COVID thing?
I think it comes out in December.
So will it be like a Netflix or a
No,
Amazon
it'll be
Prime?
a movie. It'll be a motion picture.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
An actual theater release
Yes,
then.
an actual theater.
Okay, good.
Steven Spielberg.
Hopefully we can get back to the theaters again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, that's I've gotten to do a lot of great things in my career, but it's a thing that I just I've told Paul all about it, but just to get the opportunity to do that. It could have been many players that it could have been there, and the fact that I got to do it was really exciting for me, and later in my career, man, getting to do something that means so much, And also, Yuan Racy played first trumpet on that, and I was good friends with Yuan, and so to get in, sit in his chair, and get to play that iconic music was pretty cool.
And with Bernstein's family were there too, I think you told me.
Spielberg's there, Bernstein's family, Dudamel conducting, David Newman's involved, John Williams, music supervisor. It was a big deal for me, and getting to play, sit next to Chris Martin and the cast in the New York Phil, man, and they were awesome. I felt like, I felt like family when I was there. They treated me very, very well.
Well, that's awesome, and just once again, man, we're all so happy you're doing good. You're on the mend, and you are an inspiration, and I mean that to all of us. I don't know any trumpeter who you are not an inspiration to. I mean, you have raised the bar, and you are probably, in my opinion, one of the greatest trumpet players that have ever graced the face of this earth. You got a thing, and it's really, really great seeing you here. And thank you so much for being part of this, Wayne.
My mother used to say all those same things about me, but thank you. That's extremely kind of you. And we're not curing cancer here, to coin a phrase. We're just playing the trumpet, man. So my advice, to a lot of young players is, or anybody, I mentioned ego with the trumpet and stuff. You can't really take yourself too seriously, man. Just do what you do, and bring joy to people with your playing. Let your playing do the talking, and realize that in the big scheme of things, trumpet players like to think they're really, really important. and until you become sick or have some other things happen, you realize how not important that really is. I mean, it's important, but it's not. There's a lot of things that have a lot more meaning in life. I love playing, and I'm very happy I do what I do. But I'm just glad that I'm alive.
We are too. So
yes.
Thanks so much for being here. We got to have you back for a part 2 to where we can continue the conversation.
That would be great. I would love that. I know we got long-winded about a lot of stuff, but there's a lot of stuff we can talk about. So maybe you come up with some other topics. We'll go another direction.
Well, and feel free to chime in on the group. I know you're a member of the group, and you're probably
I
a
will.
lurker.
I'm sorry. I'm not very active with any of this stuff that much, just because there's so many of them out there, and I've chimed in on a few of them. Not on your group so much, but some of the other groups you chime in, and then all of a sudden it becomes this competitive thing, and everybody knows something.
No,
better,
it's not like that here.
Oil or something, and it's like
I know we've had some nice moments with Michael Sachs and Chris Gecker and some
beautiful people.
Yeah, Tony Cadlick, some great players chiming in a little here, a little there.
Tony
and I think
is one of my favorite players of all time. I didn't really get, we didn't talk about that, but.
Maybe what we'll do next time, Paul, is we'll do a happy hour chat, because once in a while we do a happy hour chat with the guys, and we'll all grab a beer and we'll all get together on East Coast, West Coast kind of thing.
Hey, you know what would be fun is maybe let's do another one of these, and I'd love to do one with Tony and I involved, because we're kind of East Coast, West Coast. In a lot of ways, we do the same kind of work. We're in the same circles. As a matter of fact, he would have been called for that movie had I not have been available, because he was put on hold for it. And then I said, I feel bad, man. I knocked you out of a gig. He was cool with it, of course. But it'd be fun to do that with him, because Tony and I are good friends. I really admire his playing a lot. And a matter of fact, he's writing a chart for me, as we speak. Well, he started it 3 years ago, so I'm still waiting for him to finish it. That's another.
Not to put you on the spot, Tony.
So maybe we can do. It'd be really fun to do something like that if you guys.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Paul and I have talked about that, so we'll line that up, and we'll look forward to seeing you on that one. Then, Wayne, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Paul,
thank you, Paul.
Bobby,
all right,
thank you, man.
You really take care.
Take care, you guys.